we've talked about inclusion of our sector and how that comes together. That there is a question, we are in a phase that I hope we would all call growth, but behind that growth, there needs to be sustainability and the ability to make it, survive, maybe continue. And I'm delighted that our second panel brings together a group of experts from very diverse backgrounds. And we have Morten Schubert, who is a mountain biker and entrepreneur, but he's been working in the world of mobile apps. And then, like many people, can you turn that into your other love, which is your sport? And he's been working full time with Mountainbike United, a community and an app called Mountain Bike Trails. Martin Wyttenbach is the head of environmental planning and research at the ZHAW Zurich University of Applied Sciences. And he's been around the mountain bike world, founding IMBA and IMBA Swiss, but as an environmentalist, he's been looking at the impacts and the impacts of recreation in general. Matt Pierce from Patagonia, a brand I think synonymous with some of the environmental values and values that associate with this kind of work, started his career in Northumberland, but is now in Amsterdam and working, great job description, working with communities, working with ambassadors, working with grassroots sports. So, and I left Clement Doby from Decathlon to last there because I just loved it when I checked in on his bio. There's a few people on our audience who would like to have a bio that says, I was a BMX professional, and then I took part in mountain bike World Cups, and then I'm into skiing and snowboarding and all kinds of sports. And then someone gives the man a job and he works at Decathlon on BMX and mountain bike. And I'm delighted he's now the mountain bike leader for the Decathlon. So I think turning your passionate path. So that's a great group. And I'm going to do an opening round of just asking them all about the kind of growth question first. Just get their underlying thoughts on what the growth question means to them in terms of impact and kind of numbers. And let me just start with Martin. You've seen growth, I'm sure. You've seen increased usage. But as an environmentalist, how are you seeing that in your level and in your work?
Yeah, thanks, Karen, very much for having me in this round. It's nice to see that this group is growing year by year. It's very encouraging. At the university in Zurich, we've been looking at impacts of recreational activities for more than 15 years. And what we can observe is really an increased pressure on natural areas and trail systems, especially forests close to cities. This is lately, of course, due to COVID also, and higher frequencies of almost all human activities in recreational areas. Now, what could be the effects now on the environment? Of course, mountain biking can cause degradation and erosion of existing trail infrastructure, and in some cases lead to new unplanned or illegal infrastructure. And this is because there is not enough existing needs-based or user-friendly infrastructure or trails sometimes. For example, also the area here of Zurich, the forests are full of mountain bikers, and they kind of find their own way if they don't have their trails in front of their house. Now, another thing is new behavior patterns like night riding, for example. We looked in one study, I presented it, I think 3 years ago in this round, where we looked at the effects on wildlife, but we only looked at the effects on roe deer. Of course, you have to get the broader picture. And also lately, like a larger radius of action due to electrification of the mountain bikes. But yeah, so these are like new developments also that lead to more emotional discussions around the protection and use of natural areas, of recreational forests, regarding environmental and social conflicts. Wildlife is a big topic, landscape, of course. Yeah, so yeah, that I think these are more or less the main points.
Thanks. Matthew, I mean, you are a brand synonymous with some of those values that even Martin's research might kind of show are at risk and underpin, but you've just come into this market. What's brought Patagonia in as a new entrant? I think you came in just before COVID, so it can't be the recent growth. What excites you about mountain biking as a growth area?
Well, a lot of things, but actually I first point out that it's actually not our first foray into mountain biking. We actually made our first mountain bike product back in 1991, which was a padded short. And in the decade that followed, we made various iterations of those shorts and cycling jerseys too. But yeah, you are quite right. It's certainly a renewed push on our part. And away from the growth, I think the first motivator for us is that within the Patagonia employee community, we participate. There is a strong mountain biking contingent, both here in Europe/EMEA, where I'm based, and also at our global headquarters in North America. So the first thing was that many of us are very keen mountain bikers, so it's a sport that we love. And then more broadly, mountain biking fits with our direction in outdoor sports, I would say, and our ethos about the sports that we want to do and make product for. So a point there, you know, mountain biking is synonymous with human-powered adventure in wild spaces, which is at the core of Patagonia, a company that was born out of climbing and clean climbing. And through mountain biking, people connect with the outdoors. And synonymous with all of that is community and advocacy and a reverence for the spaces where you do your sport, and hopefully the intention to protect those places. So for all those reasons, mountain biking feels like a space that's right for us and somewhere that we certainly want to be. And in terms of a goal, and I apologize because there's some noise with someone pushing a large trolley past my apartment window. A goal for us is being a part of the conversation in mountain biking as this sport grows. And as many people have alluded to on this summit already, the sport is growing exponentially. So we want to be part of the conversations about how this sport grows and to play the part that we can. And we want to partner with people in this space. And that means end users, ambassadors, retailers, magazines, mountain bike event companies who have ethics and values similar to ours, and people we can partner with in our mission statement, which is to save the home planet and through sport, and this sport in particular.
Thank you. That's a passionate and supportive evocation, I think, of what many of us are here for. But you mentioned community, and that's a great way to leap across to Morten, who has come through community into making this his job and his work. And Morten, I mean, what are you seeing? What's going on in your numbers? What's going on in your community? Are you any evidence that it's the same people riding lots more, or are we on a kind of really, is the outgrowth there in your world too?
Yeah, we have seen some incredible numbers the last year, or since COVID started in March. March 2020, we saw over the next 4 weeks from the COVID were closed the country down. We saw an explosion where we actually went up to the users of our app to index 10 times more users just within 4 weeks. So that was pretty amazing. And what is also amazing is that level have stayed that high since. We have seen new users, and we see a lot of other user groups. So the behavior of the users is also different. We can see on especially easy trails, well-built blue trails, they have a higher usage than other trails. So we have a lot of data, but we haven't been analyzing into the bottom of how the individual users changes during time. But we can see a lot of new users actually spend time on those blue trails. And there has also been other movements that have been easy to see. And back to the new users, it looks like that they are traveling more. They are seeing more different trails than the old user group. So they have another kind of behavior. They are doing more exploration of the trails. It's hard to say if that's COVID or the push we actually are doing in the app to go out and explore the world. So I can't tell what is what, but we can see that if we look into the average of our average users, they actually try a new trail every month. So 12 new trails a month. And they track in average about 2.1 times a week. So they often change trails. So that's one of the things we've seen, some of the things we've seen.
Great. And Clément, I mean, you see huge numbers, your business has global reach. What are you seeing in your do you know about your new consumers? Do you know where they're coming from? Do you know much about their buying patterns at this early stage? What does Decathlon see?
Hello, Kevin. Thank you for our invitation. Of course, for Mountainbike, Mountainbike see an increase in sales in 20 and in 21 also in first semester. Of course, the global cycling sports are boosted because of the context. We know all of it. Because we can practice it with safety, because of the fresh air, and for fun because of the evasion topic, and versus the quarantine. And we met, for example, 78% of French people say in the last survey last week that they need to go outside and to be in contact with nature. And why MTB bigger compared to other practice of bikes? In Decathlon, we say we can analyze three main reasons. The first one is the pandemic context is reinforcing MT bikers, mountain bikers, I mean regular riders, to practice more for the same reasons as before, needs of evasion in local, in outdoor, and these people save money because less restaurants, less party, less holidays, less trips, less everything. So they put more money in bike and equipment. This is the first reason. The second one is if we focus now on first range of bikes and e-bikes, we can count the classic empty bikers, but also two other types of customers. I mean, teenagers who love the sporty style of mountain bike, and also parents also prefer MTB because more robust, more resistant, and also active people who prefer robust bikes instead of very adapted bikes. I mean city bikes to move from A to B, and they prefer this MTB also in case of. I mean, in case of they would ride in forest 1 or 2 times in the year with friends. The third main reason is new mountain bikers and or coming back mountain bikers. I mean, all people ex mountain bikers who come back with EMTB. We can see with sales, but also on trails every weekend. When we ride, we can show we can see that mountain bikers are more and more on tracks. I've never seen so much people on trails since last May 20. We can see that some of them are new. They wear very old helmets or no helmet, or fully equipped bike with many accessories but no garment, no equipment. So we can see also they are not so smooth on the bikes. They start riding very late in the Sunday morning in the rush hour, and everybody in the same place, in the same most accessible areas. So I think EMTB increased the range of new mountain bikers, or all generations who stop in the past mountain bike and they come back with the EMTB. Yeah, I think robustness, the contact with the nature, the funny side are the three main reasons of bigger mountain bike sales. And EMTB is also a good opportunity to provide this market, to push this market.
Thank you. And that's an interesting thought. If you follow the diversity session previously, they're not like us. A few of them might be, as we hear, old school and have come back, but there's a lot of people in there who are not traditionally part of the mountain bike community, and that's an interesting part. And Martin, going now on the kind of sustainability route, what are you seeing in terms of behavior and environmental impact? And is that changing because these are different people with different bikes from different backgrounds, different communities? Does that have an effect?
Well, what we see is mountain biking is really here. Is really here to stay, and we have to find solutions, I think. So I think the most important measure is to improve infrastructure and build more needs-based and user-friendly infrastructure, and address these different segments and user groups of mountain bikers, and then also apply and communicate clear rules. I think that's one of the most important measures, actually, to define the rules and also to educate people, and not only the mountain bikers, but also all the stakeholders when it comes to planning. And therefore we need more best case examples and more research also. And that's what we're trying to do to create more evidence to kind of neutralize emotional discussions also, because it's usually a very emotional discussed topic.
Interesting. Matthew, when I was getting my pre-briefing for this session, I understood that maybe at Patagonia, you've even reached a conclusion from your research that maybe mountain bikers are different, maybe less sensitive to the environment, or there's some challenges in our community that are different from other outdoor sports. Have I understood that correctly? And what's kind of behind, or what have you been finding?
No, I wouldn't actually necessarily say that. I wouldn't say that outdoor sports people from all of the outdoor sports are viewed in any single way. I think there's nuances across the outdoor sports, and we're engaged in various sports, from mountain sports through to surfing and fly fishing. And I think also there are nuances within the sport. And if we take, let's say, skiing as an example, you have the backcountry skier who gets up to go ski touring at pre-sunrise and wants to do a long day in the mountains, and they're more akin to an endurance athlete. And then you have, perhaps in the same mountain range, the possibly younger rider who wants to hit sliders and send it off kickers. And that means that these two people are perceived very differently within a sport. And I think mountain biking is the same, as Anila alluded to earlier. It's a sport with very different people and very different subgenres within it. So I don't think that mountain bikers are necessarily perceived in a certain way, but I think there are some negative perceptions from the external world, and I think all mountain bikers get tarred with that brush. So I think some people would perceive mountain bikers as being somewhat fast and dangerous. It's perceived as a noisy trail using group. There is a belief, sometimes correct, but of course not always, that mountain bikers damage trails. And I think there is also perhaps a misguided view among some trail users that mountain bikers are adrenaline fueled and antisocial. And I think the reality, of course, is that mountain bikers are not like that. And there are many mountain bikers who have a very different spirit and different motivations. But I think that the negative perceptions that the sport's been lumbered with for certainly since I was getting into mountain biking as a 10-year-old, I think the reality is that is a challenge that mountain bikers have to work through, the mountain bike community has to work through. And our concern at Patagonia is that as the sport grows, and it is of course a growing sport, that mountain bikers will be singled out and excluded and won't have a seat at the table when it comes to ensuring that this sport can grow and mountain bikers can have access to legal trails and be trusted partners in the outdoors.
Thank you. I mean, it takes me again and go to Morten. I mean, you've said already your new users are different. Are they the same? Are they easier to build into the community and become part of the movement? Or are you seeing any other differences other than their kind of riding behavior? You're muted, I'm afraid.
Now you probably can hear me.
Yes.
I think the new users we see as more loyal users of our app because of they need information about where the good trails are and what is legal trails. And we see a lot of them actually don't know much about mountain biking, don't know much of how they get into there. What we see in Denmark, I don't think the clubs is growing as fast as the numbers of mountain bikers. We see about 2% or something like that. There is in a club, so the need for information about new mountain bikers is very high. So we actually see they uses our app a lot more than the old mountain bikers to get information about where to meet next time and which trail to ride. That is quite different. And hopefully we can help new mountain bikers to get good experience on legal trails.
Good. And Clement, I mean, in the past, I've hit, the enormous reach of Decathlon through social media, through Facebook groups, through kind of customers there. What role can a global company play in, the education, the development, the support for the newer riders in how and where they ride, as well as obviously buying the product?
Yeah, I think EMTB growth could bring some positive impacts, but also some risks. For sure, thanks to EMTB, people won't stop to like EMTB for the coming years because of sporty engines, robustness, contact with nature, more accessible, etc. Healthcare for many of them also. But some risks like deterioration of the nature, the accidents with runners, walkers, with hunters, with owners of private lands. We can see some difficulties or with sort of blocking with parks and national parks because of all accidents we can meet. We can see also many crash, especially for beginners, because e-bikes allows them to go far and to be lost, to climb hills or mountains too much technical, too much difficult for them. So I think we really need to manage the riding area, to avoid accidents, to avoid crash, to make preventive protection of the nature and people and animals and everything. To learn actually men, women, kids about the nature. And I think I trust in mountain bikers to respect rules and to make the good path about it. I think industry of bikes, we can also make some smart garment to help the ride of mountain bike and the field of ride, the trails. So that's it.
Yeah, thank you. Good. Well, I've got time and think for one more round in terms of this session, and I think the question I saw in the chat, and I think is a question I had in my mind coming in. I mean, we're on the call now. We're with users, community-based apps, brands, researchers. I mean, you've all got your different experiences. Clement, you've been a sportsman, in that kind of step. If we actually conclude how we make mountain biking not only sustainable, but communicate to the outside world that is sustainable, who do you think are the key players that have to kind of do that in the coming years? And in that sense, and then maybe you have your own personal view or a kind of corporate view from any of you. So just as a closing word, just for each of you, who's going to do this? And perhaps I'll come back to you, Clement. You said, there is a role for industry, but your last word, I mean, who's going to do this education and sustainability and good trails and this kind of thing?
I think we have all of us a responsibility to the nature and to bikers. For my part, I mean, like a brand, we have a community of users and customers. I think we have to speak to them, to explain them the rules, the impact we can make, and the protection we have to apply. I think we have a sort of learning responsibility, and we have a second role is about the products, to make it more smarter, to make it cleaner, cooler as well. So yeah, for my conclusion is education, or sort of learning to customers, and to work on products to make them better for them and for the nature. Thank you.
Martin, environmental protection, whose job is it in our community?
In my opinion, like I said, dissemination of knowledge is very important. And we start, of course, at the university to educate students. I think education is important. It's important to educate the kids also in riding programs, etc. But then the scene is getting organized also, like in Switzerland now we have IMBA Switzerland, and I think this will be also a channel to educate the riders. But then it's also a task of the authorities, of course, to kind of get the knowledge to the people also in the right way.
Thank you. Morten, almost the same question. Whose job is it to carry this forward from your point of view of your work and your community, your experience?
I think we all have a role in that. And what we are actually doing is we are inviting all our users in to be a part of the national organizations, so they can have a voice. And the national organizations also can have a voice that can be heard of all mountain bikers. So we like to see ourselves as a speaker for that good intention. And we also have a role in helping out building new trails. So we actually decided to give 20% of our subscription revenue directly back to all the building of new trails. So I think we all have a role, and our mission is actually to getting more people to ride and get them together and helping developing this sport. So we all have a role, I think.
Thank you. And Matthew, I'm going to give you the last word on this one, but perhaps just a question to add supplementary is there any other sector we could look to that you think does it well? This kind of responsibility and values and sustainability that mountain biking could refer to?
There is, and I actually would highlight a few. I mean, first one, the discussion about as the sport grows, who's responsible? That is very much akin to the discussion in climbing, rock climbing. There's been an explosion in indoor climbing in recent years. And then during COVID, with gyms closed across the world, there was an increased use of outdoor climbing areas. And the discussion there was, whose job is it to police this? And the answer for climbing and indeed for mountain biking, in my mind, is everyone. So if we take industry as an example, brands have a responsibility in the products that they make, in their messaging, to educate people about the impact that this sport has, and to consider if people in the mountain bike sector want to massively expand and grow their business, how's that going to work with the finite resources that we have to both make the products that we use and the trails that we ride? I think beyond just brands, if you include magazines as an industry body, I think the mountain bike media has a real responsibility to be really talking about trail advocacy and the responsible introduction onto the trails of new people as they come into the sport. And I also think that if we consider ambassadors and athletes who are sponsored by brands as part of the industry, then they also have I would say a responsibility to show leadership in that space and to be a part of this discussion. But then if we go away just from industry, I think let's look at the community. You know, when I was growing up mountain biking, it was where I'm from in Northeast England, somewhat counterculture. The trails, which were built by people who were grown-ups, I was much younger, there was definitely not permission to be riding on those trails. I would not say the mountain bike community was a good partner on that area of woodland where our trails were being developed whatsoever. So I think that the community, people taking part in the sport, have a role in being good partners in using outdoor and wild spaces, and being a part of the discussion with other users of the outdoors, connecting with other stakeholders and ensuring that we are expanding the sport safely, we are considering other people's viewpoints, and we're not making ourselves unpopular in the process. And to answer your question about sports where I think there has been perhaps an increase in environmental awareness as the sports have grown, I would actually point to two. The first one would be surfing. So back in the 90s and then into the early noughties and up to now, you had organizations, grassroots NGOs run by surfers, such as Surfers Against Sewage, who were educating and engaging surfers in the risk that was faced by them because of pollution, and then after that, plastic pollution, and now in the surf community, there are very few surfers who are not on board with that message, and would scoff at the idea of being a part of a beach clean, and would not want to be a part of collective efforts to prevent these forms of pollution in their space. I'm not saying all surfers are perfect, but it's accepted within the community that that's a viable thing to be connected with. And then if we look at mountain sports, and if we look at snowboarding and skiing in particular, sorry, just someone walking into the room there. If we look at how, as skiing and snowboarding have grown, organizations such as Protect Our Winters have also grown in tandem with these sports, and how they've been imbuing in skiers and snowboarders a spirit of environmental awareness and connecting them in the fight against climate change because of the impact it will have on their natural playgrounds. I think those are two good examples of sports where the community, with support from brands, have really come together to address the environmental impact of their sports as they've grown and as more people have become a part of those communities.
Great. Well, we've run out of time, sadly. And again, like all of our panels, this is almost, I think we're almost booked the next 3 years summits, IMBA team, in terms of we'll have a session on each of these and they'll be really big. And I can see the crossover from this discussion with the previous panelists are now ferociously engaged in the chat, building up the kind of whole storytelling. So that's there's a lot of feedback there and a lot of maybe comments that you'll be able to follow up in the next half an hour and after this session. But again, our virtual applause from everyone to our panelists. Thank you very much for your contribution today. And my job to kind of wrap this one